Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Working the Web to Win, the online show that's designed to keep you ahead of the curve when it comes to technology. However, today, Hector and I are going to talk about the exact opposite of that proposition when we delve into the phenomenon known as technological extinction. So, if you hope to survive in today's all-too-wired world and want to know the 5 keys to keeping off the high-tech endangered species list, stay tuned as we show you how to stave off technological extinction on today's show. But before I do that, I'm going to let Hector give all of you out there the call-in number in case you want to join the conversation.
So for our guests out in cyber world, the call-in number is 213-943-3808. That's 213-943-3808. Of course, you can also find us by going to workingthewebtowin.com, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, and YouTube, and especially the YouTube show, because it's got all the really cool Easter eggs that you can find. And
I'm sure with technological extinction, you can expect to see some dinosaurs popping up sooner or later.
When I think about technological extinction, I think about the extinction of my dollars. That's the big thing I think about.
Well, what I think about are all the tech that's come and gone. In fact, got something right here you may or may not recognize. Yeah. This is a zip drive.
I got one that I thought I'd keep for the Smithsonian.
This actually still works too. It's a zip drive, and way back when we were using floppies, something that would give you a whopping 100 megabytes was a big deal. In fact, some of these will even do 250.
I remember the very first Apple I had. We used Panasonic notebooks.
Right.
And we would record stuff on cassettes. And, of course, half the time we would get it and half the time it wouldn't. So you'd have to record it like 4 or 5 times to make sure you had a copy of whatever program you wrote.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of the tech that's come and gone. But before we do that, to make sure that we don't become extinct, I think we'd better talk a little bit about our sponsors.
Yeah. And I would like to mention our one of our primary sponsors, which is Tub King and Senior Tub. Of course, they make the most beautiful bathtubs in the world, the ones you can see in all the really cool movies with Cameron Diaz and so on. And they also make the walk-in tubs, which are probably some of the most therapeutic tubs that you can buy, but they guarantee the best price, which I think is the really coolest part of all. And MedMasters, which is the first social network community specifically for people in the medical industry.
And not just people that are doctors and nurses, but I mean even the other side of the equation. They've got everything from medical IT personnel in there to recruiters, salespeople, so it really covers the full gamut.
Yeah, so you can either get connected or get a job, but the most important thing is you can join it for free.
Yeah.
So.
Always a good thing.
Always a good thing.
So where do you want to start today's show? Because we're talking about technological extinction, so I think really we have to go back in history a little bit and talk about some of the technology that should have, would have, could have made it, but really never quite caught on, at least not enough to stay the course.
Yeah, I would start probably with 8-track, which was around for about 3 or 4 years, and then quickly got ate up by
cassettes, yeah.
And when I made my list of all these really cool devices that I've owned over, one of my favorite was a Sony Walkman.
Right.
Which was one of the big reasons that 8-track pretty much went away, because everybody just wanted to have that portable music thing.
Right.
And it was pretty hard to have a portable 8-track because it was a big, huge, honky thing.
And if you're going to go that far back when you're talking about tape, do you remember when they had the Beta versus the VHS?
I had a Beta Max.
In fact, I've got one of their little ads over here. It says, "We invented the competition." It says, "Better before, better now, better later." But it's BETA,
yeah,
right?
and really, they were better. It was a superior product, but guess what? Superior doesn't give you lasting power.
That's right. And even when they're touted by major corporations, because Beta was Sony.
Right.
So, I mean, they're a big player, and people talk a lot about the fact that, if you want to avoid technological extinction, you want to hook your caboose onto the
big players.
The big train, right? So, but I mean, Apple's had some flops.
Right.
Remember?
Well, the reality is, it doesn't matter whether you're the biggest player or the smallest player. These things sort of come in cycles. Right now, Sony is the inventor of a multitude of great products.
Right.
And now they're really sort of on the defensive because a lot of their products are becoming technologically extinct. And people are moving to other venues and other items and other kinds of things. So, for example, they used to be really big in Beta. Then DVD was also a big deal for them.
Right.
The PlayStation for a long time was number 1.
Sure.
Now, through heavy competition, is not number 1 anymore. Blu-ray is taken over, and they don't have a lock on Blu-ray. So, You know.
Oh yeah, there's always infighting going on.
And then, of
out
course, we're moving away from even Blu-ray to essentially digital medium.
Sure.
Either internet,
state.
so it's on this cloud,
Or solid
state of some
right.
kind. So, they don't have any kind of lock on it, but they had several really cool things on there. They were instrumental in some of the laser discs, the original big manga ones.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Came up,
and again, that was way ahead of its time.
Right.
Sometimes you can be too much ahead of its time. In fact, the one thing that caused Steve Jobs a headache, which was one of the few things that he actually had a miss on, was Lisa.
Yeah.
And Lisa was clearly way ahead of the curve. I mean, a lot of the things that we regard today as commonplace, like computer mouse, the graphically, the GUI, the graphical interface and things like that. I mean, those things we take for granted today. That was the computer that started it all. But of course, the problem was it was very expensive.
Well, there was also other problems because I actually used to sell them, believe it or not. And when they first launched it, it had technological problems. They actually made the circuit board a little bit tight, and the memory chips would sort of squeak out when it heated up, and then it would just fail.
Right.
And it wouldn't broke. You'd have to turn it off, push the chips back in, and then it would work.
Yeah. Plus, it was like $10,000, or most of the.
But essentially, it was the Obamacare of its time because when it came out and it had a problem,
right?
People never forget that.
Right.
So I mean, they would have fixed that technological problem. But nobody was going to buy something that was considered, a broken toy,
Especially for that price.
Right, because they were like $5,000.
No, they were like $9,000. They were very
well. Without the hard drive, it was
Right.
$5,000 or something like that. But without the hard drive, it was sort of a useless box. So that was, and Apple's had more than one, flop.
But that was the one that was so big that actually Steve Jobs ended up without a job. That's what got him pushed out of Apple for a while.
Yeah.
Of course, that wasn't a bad thing for some people because he's the guy that actually went and saved another technology which was foundering, which was Pixar.
Right.
Because you remember, Pixar was originally founded by George Lucas. And it was bleeding so much money that even George Lucas, with all his money from Star Wars, could not afford to keep them afloat. And it just so happens that Steve was kind of between gigs, and he had
some money.
He had the money, so he could float the boat for a few years.
He was flushing cash because they kicked him out of Apple.
That's right. And he came along at just the right time, and then that ended up becoming a really big hit. In fact, that's to this day.
Yeah. They're still making all the hit movies
and all the Academy Awards they've won and everything else.
And the technology that they have advanced because of the need that they had to come
And then
up
after, of course, Apple saw all the great things that Steve was doing as the other companies, thinking, well, maybe we were a little rash.
Yeah, we need to come back.
Let's have lunch. Let's do lunch.
Anyway, I'm looking at, here's a couple of things, because sometimes when people think of technological extinction, it's actually a good and bad thing. It's a normal cycle that happens. But for a while there, for example, when the IBM PC came out, they had a lock on the market for about 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden, people were able to start cloning, and then boom. In a very short period of time, IBM, which is one of the largest corporations in the world, even today, could not compete.
Right.
They just couldn't keep up with it anymore, and they
ended up selling that division off a few years ago.
Yeah, so they sold it to Lenovo, which is a Chinese company.
Yeah.
So now when you buy a Lenovo, it used to be an IBM. I look at a lot of these things were really cool devices that we could have had out there. Yeah. Here's another industry that's gone through major radical change. For over 100 years, people were taking photographs that were actual on film.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, they came out with these little cartridge-type deals, and then digital photography came out, even in the floppy days.
Yeah, well, I mean, about the last bastion of film is the motion picture industry, and that, the writing's on the wall. It's just a matter of time before they can produce a superior image using digital technology.
Well, that
I know they are shooting movies with digital, but still some of the people are still producing them with film because they still claim that film has a slightly higher resolution.
Well, I don't know. Lord of the Rings I don't think they shot it with film. The latest one.
But they still are shooting some of them with film, is what I'm saying. So eventually, though, there won't be any more film, is what I'm saying.
Well, I know those guys like to buy those red cameras, with the bazillion resolution on them.
We know our producers keep saying his prayers for that thing, right?
Well, we told him to put in his order and come up with his checkbook. CRTs. CRTs have been around since the 30s.
Right.
Try and find one. I mean, you can find one in my house. So I keep it out there in the living room, in the Florida room area, so if they break in, they can't haul away a 150-pound monstrosity.
In fact, you want them to, but they won't do it, no matter how much you ask, how nicely you ask them. Yeah. Please steal me.
Here's another one there was a really big one for about a 10-year period, dot matrix printers.
Mm-hmm.
Gone. I mean, they had all kinds of flavors. The inkjet dot matrix printers, the pin dot matrix printers, the thermal paper dot matrix printers, and now they're all in the graveyard somewhere. It'd be hard pressed.
And we'll talk about a little later on what you can do with some of those things, because actually there is an aftermarket for certain types of antiquated, collectible technology.
Well, a good example of that is actually people love to collect vinyl records.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a big market, and there's actually manufacturers that are remaking vinyl records because there's a demand for it. The trick part is finding the needles for your phonographs and stuff like that. Because there aren't very many of those things around.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about
those are collectibles too now, right?
We talked about quadraphonic and all that kind of stuff in here.
I actually went and found an article called "The Most Collectible PCs of All Time," and they say that if you have an Apple I, which originally sold for, of all things, $666.66.
I had one.
Okay. They said the current market value is between $15,000 to $25,000 for one of those.
Yeah.
Should have kept it in your garage. I mean, some of the.
I sold it when I got the 2 floppies for my IBM. Leave it on.
Yeah, they're in there too. In fact, here's one right here. It says the Commodore 64. And they said that, but the current market value of that is between $10 and $300, so it's not a really high priority collectible.
Yeah, so they only sold for like $100 brand new anyway.
Well, actually, they said the original price was $595 for that original.
They used to break a lot. I remember they used to break. Especially when you shot them with your gun or something like that.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the 5 that I was talking about on our list. You know, that the 5 keys to avoiding technological extinction. Number 5 is where can you capitalize on defunct technology, and there is a collectibles market for some of it.
I know if you go to the Smithsonian right now and you go in their computer section, you can see all these different things from the 80s, because the 80s was just, the heyday of all these different products. And now the churn rate or the churn time is shortened so much that you don't see things coming. Like, this is a great example. The Zip came out. It was only around for maybe 2.5 years. Yeah. It's gone. Mm-hmm. As soon as Blu-ray took off or whatever, it's like 3 times the capacity.
DVDs and all that became commonplace. Yeah. But I mean, it definitely served its purpose at the time, because it was a quantum leap from a floppy. You couldn't store much on a floppy.
I think that one of the things that a lot of people don't think of, especially, we don't think of it as a technological jump, but it really is a big one. Yeah. And that is the ether, the cloud, is actually a new technology that is making a lot of hardware
obsolete,
that disappear. Mm-hmm. And here's a couple of examples. So, for the long time, you would buy DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever. And now what do, you watch it on the cloud. You actually can take your DVDs and upload them to the cloud, so you can watch them wherever you go. Yeah. Same kind of thing for backup storage. Most people do cloud backup storage now instead of going out and buying a box and connecting it to your unit. The cloud itself is good. It's actually eliminating eliminating stores.
That's right.
I mean,
speaking of getting eliminated, one of the things that's basically on the DOA list is the Barnes & Noble Nook, which went head-to-head against Amazon with the Kindle. And they fought the law, and the law won.
And again, that was really a superior product to a lot of it. Was
highly touted just a couple of years ago. Consumer Reports said it was the latest, greatest, gotta have, in that market. But that was 2 years ago.
And even today, if you compare it to like an iPad, the latest iPad with a Retina display, it's actually a superior product to that. Yeah. But the marketing, again, they're not first, and they don't have the superior marketing.
And that's everything today. Yeah. We've seen that a lot of times where even superior software bit the dust because the other company's just better at marketing.
Well, Microsoft is a really good example of that. Microsoft Word was far inferior to WordPerfect. Mm-hmm. But Microsoft won that battle because they knew how to market better. Yeah. One of the things they would do is they would give away essentially their product for 1/5 the price of WordPerfect. And then once they got you hooked in after a couple of generations, and WordPerfect pretty much bit the dust, or actually they're still around, but they almost bit the dust. Now they sell their product to you for $300 or $400 a pop.
Same thing happened with the browser wars, right? I mean, Microsoft won that because they could give away their product for free.
For 14 years, they were number one, and then 2 years ago, I guess, Chrome finally chopped them in the eye. And the same thing will happen eventually to Google.
Before them, it was them against Netscape, and they actually won that war, and then they lost the war to Google.
You eventually you will win a war, but eventually you'll use a VHS.
Or you win a battle and you lose the war.
Right.
I mean, that's the way it works.
VHS won the battle against Sony, and then quickly lost to DVD.
Right.
And DVD's only been out since the late 80s, I guess. So a 20-year span or so, 25-year span, and they're already losing the war to not only Blu-ray, but to the cloud and to, portable digital devices of all kinds. I mean, you can have your put the videos on your iPhone, your Android phone.
That's right.
All the little MP3 players now have video.
Speaking of video, don't forget to tell the audience that they can now see our Working the Web to Win on YouTube.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool, because if you not only do you get to listen to what we're actually talking about, but you're going to get to see a lot of visuals that you don't normally see, including some really cool things that our producer comes up with.
Well, we've had a Working the Web to Win YouTube channel for a pretty long time, but now we have a new one called Working the Web TV Show.
Right.
Working the Web TV Show, that'll be exclusively the TV show.
And you can find that at our workingthewebtowin.com site. Just click on the little tab that says TV show. Well, and speaking of the show, one of the things that I talked about in my blog was, and one of the technologies that's cutting edge, which may or may not make the cut, is of course Google Glass.
Yeah.
I remember last year, you had to actually apply to be able to pay $1,500 to be one of the first kids on your block to wear this weird thing on your head. I say it's not only in your face; it's more or less on your face, and that's what the problem is. In fact, they've come up with a kind of a derogatory term for people that wear Google Glass. They call them glass holes.
Glass holes.
Yeah, and I think you said that they really should start making these things more available to the military and armed forces, because you're not likely to call a guy with a gun a glass hole.
Right. And the reality is, that's where it's probably going to belong, because people are really sort of privacy sensitive right now, and you're not going to give a cop a bunch of static unless you're drunk or something.
Well, and I said that really, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense for the armed forces, and particularly for
and they have actually had these kinds of things before, because they have a little camera.
But look at how many times you get these lawsuits against cops for using excessive force, and they put the cameras now are in the car, but they're not on the cop.
Right.
Well, with Google Glass, that's going to give
he can see himself punching the guy.
Well, believe me, he was not going to do that when he knows it's going back to the station and being reviewed. Okay, that's the whole point. It gives you kind of pause, and that's one of the other things that I talked about in the keys to avoiding technological extinction, is that you have to. How does the giggle factor affect the product that you're working? Because every comedian out there has been making fun of Google Glass since it came out. So sometimes that will kill a product, or even a company. I've seen that happen before. Again, remember what was it, Jack in the Box?
Yeah.
Okay, that had a hard time when I remember Johnny Carson. This shows you how dated we're talking about here. Called it Jack in the Pouch, because they were accused of using kangaroo meat in some of their products. That was it.
Yeah, it was gone.
All it takes is the worst attack can actually come from a comedian. Sometimes humor is not a good thing, and like I said, there've been a lot of comedians poking fun at glass.
Well, I know you mentioned this in the article, where there are several writers out there that say, well, here's how you protect yourself, and they give you a list of different things. My thing is, the first thing you need to look at, because I don't think you can protect yourself. I think that's really misled.
Well, okay, again, define the word protect. Because one of the things that I say is, if you absolutely positively have to be the first kid on the block with a new toy, and you're what we call an early adopter, you're gonna take your chances. You pay your money, you take your chances. There's no way around that, no matter what you do. If you always got to be the first kid to have the toy, when the toy is, it's like when you got it at Christmas. within a few weeks you probably forgot all about the toy, and that's the way it is for a lot of people. Or the market forgets about the toy.
Especially technology like computers and things like that. I tell people, look at it. If you can get 5 years out of it, I don't care what it is.
Right.
That's the best you're going to do. For the most part, you're not going to get a stereo system anymore. Stick it up on the shelf, and it's going to play music for you for 25 years like our parents have.
Right.
Or a TV, because the old TVs used to last forever.
Right.
So that kind of technology pretty much doesn't exist anymore.
Right, and the thing is, anybody that's really what I call an Apple head, they're really into Apple, they're willing to stand out in the rain all night long, waiting to buy something the next morning, 2 weeks later they can mail order.
Yeah.
I mean, those are people, it's like if you're going to be an early adopter and you're that crazy about, being the first kid on the block to have something, then you pay your money and take your chances.
Yeah, and the reality is, I mean, I understand the whole Apple mentality because Apple makes some of the best products in the world. The quality is second to none for the most part. But even with Apple, one of the last iPhones came out with all kinds of pretty silly glitches that they had problems with and so on. So there's no such thing as a perfect hedge to protect you from anything.
And number
like
two
that.
is, guess what? Sometimes good things come to those who wait.
Yeah.
Because if you wait a little bit, it's like, how many of those tablets have you had so far?
This is my second generation, I guess.
I think it's about your fourth or fifth tablet, though.
No, this is actually...
Third?
This is my third one. I bought one for my son and me.
Right.
And he actually still has the one that I gave for you. And then this is my second one. But my third generation will be one that really is a business tablet. Because they really don't have those yet. And they're still working out the bugs with, I think, the Microsoft ones. And the Apple ones really are not business tablets. I don't care what Apple says.
Right.
I mean, they're just not really good business tools yet. They're getting better, but they really don't give you the full-fledged, things without the keyboard and stuff like that.
And tablets, when you compare, like, a laptop to a tablet, you can still get a heck of a lot more in a laptop than
You can get the
a tablet.
17-inch laptop for less money than the 10-inch tablet.
I know, and this does more.
And it comes with more stuff.
Right.
So,
So if you wait, technology has a habit of getting cheaper and cheaper, and they perfect it. You don't have as many bugs once you've gotten down the road a little bit with it. Because remember when we used to spend thousands of dollars for these things now you can buy them for under $500.
Yeah, all day. And again, this is not on the top of the line, but it's pretty high end. I mean, this is a desktop replacement type of product, and it was under $500.
But speaking of things that are more, less form, more function, how about iWatch? Okay, iWatch is kind of a unique product in that there is no such thing as an iWatch.
It's an iWatch name.
Well, and the funny thing is,
category.
What was it, like 2 years ago? That Apple came out and started touting this idea for the iWatch.
It was 4 years ago when Wozniak talked about it and leaked it. But there wasn't any such thing.
No, and there still isn't.
Right.
In fact, I've read several articles where some of these writers are literally saying, is this a practical joke by Apple?
Yeah. Because
but it's
2 years ago,
industry.
Remember when the Pebble was coming out, they were saying, ours is coming out in January. And a whole year goes by.
Samsung now has it. You've got all kinds of companies that have come out with these things, and Apple still has not put one on the shelf.
Right.
So what's that all about?
It's really sort of a strange thing. Again, I think they're going to have to do something else because the iWatch time is, I think, past.
What I like here is they even have a video. It says, iWatch Concept proposes some awesome advanced iOS 8 features for the iWatch. Well, there is no iWatch.
Right. There is no iWatch.
And I think this is what happens when geeks have too much time on their hands.
So I think that the real thing that's going to be the super game changer is 3D printing. And we talked about it a little bit in the blog.
Yeah.
I mean, again, when you have the capability of building replacement parts, or better yet, just building one from scratch with your printer.
Or building replacement parts for your body. Now they do medical 3D printers. They can print food. In fact, they're talking about sending one up to the space station because those guys would kill for pizza up there.
Well, again, if you can actually, there's a guy who built a gun from scratch with a printer and so on that actually fires. So with these 3D printers, you'll be able to make products, and that'll change manufacturing as we know it.
Of course.
And it'll also, with the free flow of data that we have with the internet.
They printed a car. They actually printed an entire car using a 3D printer.
Well, think
and
about
they're printing houses now.
If somebody uploads the data for how to make something, whether it's copyrighted or now it's on the internet, and the genie's out of the bottle, if you will.
That's right.
So,
well, and it's a type of a technology that makes sense too, because if you can manufacture something for less than you can go out and pay for it, why not cut out the middleman? So it's going to change retail as we know it. Because now instead of, if you need something, instead of ordering that something, you'll just order the app that'll print the something.
Or you get the app for free. I mean, right now there are several big organizations that are gathering these databases to provide this information.
But one of the things that NASA has been looking at is two things. Number one, of course, like I said, is to actually print food because, as I said, that's one of the big problems. In fact, one of the biggest complaints that astronauts have, it's kind of like the kids with the cafeteria. They get tired of the cuisine
Space
up
food
there.
is pretty bad.
Yeah, and they're only, some of them are up there for 6 months at a time. And they said by the time they're done, they would kill for a cheeseburger. they can't get milk. I mean, there's a lot of things up there that you just can't get.
Well, they can't carry it up there, so everything has to be freeze-dried and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly, but if they can actually print some of these things, it'll give them some more variety. And of course, the other thing that they're talking about, they've already started doing this now, is actually print parts. Because that's another thing, you can't, how many parts do you want to ship up to the space station, hope, that you're going to need it?
Right. Ship up the database.
Right, it makes it a lot easier. They can print it on demand whenever they need a part, they just print it.
Well, before the end of the show, I wanted to, because I know we're getting ready to do the Worldwide Weird. We're looking at extinction as a general rule, and one of the notes that I wrote to myself, we got biological extinction, where all these animals have disappeared. We have technological extinction. Well, we're actually coming to the point in time where technological and biological extinction, or the reverse of that, could be a reality. That is, we could invent stuff that makes us technologically extinct. Okay, robots start running everything and so on. But we also have the capability of reversing extinction.
Right.
We take animals that are gone, we take their DNA, there's actually a guy that I read an article, it was pretty cool. He's planning on bringing back the mammoths that they found frozen, essentially, in Siberia.
Yeah.
So that's sort of a crazy thing. And this guy is vehement that he says, we're going to bring back all these animals that are gone.
Talking about bringing back animals, last week on Worldwide Weird, we talked about the mutt bombing. Okay. Well, instead of bombing your mutts, now you can bond with your mutts, because a 14-year-old girl, in order to cure her dog's anxiety while the family was away from home, you got a lot of latchkey dogs, she actually invented an app that allows the dog, don't ask me how the dog answers the iPhone, but actually to not only watch them on the phone so they can talk to the dog during the day, but she actually, if you hit a little button here, it says drop a cookie, the dog a dog biscuit. So apparently there's now apps for animals.
But they must have one. I mean, I saw the show on TV the other day. They were talking about the brand new, totally automated houses.
Right.
And you have to have some kind of device that you can dial into and so on. So if they had their phone system tied into their TV, like you can, if you have a Google phone, like I have on my TV, you can actually dial into the TV if you wanted. And
so you're going to be able to text your dog and say, fetch? That's probably coming out next. Because remember, they have the device now that turns the dog's bark into the human voice and kind of tells you what they're thinking.
That I'd really like to see for some reason. my dog never barks at anything, so it'd be really good just to get something out of him, from time to time. But anyway.
But maybe you can't get the dog to fetch, okay? But Apple is now coming up with, it's not really an app too, it's a hardwired algorithm called iBeacon, which is kind of top secret in Apple, but literally what it's going to be able to do is, how you have the GPS built into your phone?
GPS
but the problem is with the GPS, it isn't that accurate.
Yeah, 9 meters.
Right.
Like that.
Well, with this new algorithm that they're putting in called iBeacon, they claim that it's going to be able to pick you up within like a square foot. And it's obvious where they're going to be going with this technology. It's going to be like the Minority Report, where you're going to be walking into a store and all of a sudden you're going to, you're going to get this little text and you're going to pick up your smartphone and it's going to say, get 25% off if you buy, this product that you're standing right in front of.
Or you take that chip out and you attach it to a cockroach and let it go in the room.
There you go.
The cockroach will be setting off all the stuff while you're going around shopping,
Well, I don't have a cockroach, but we do have something else that I did want to talk about for Worldwide Weird. Remember Watson? Yeah. That was the talking computer that actually beat the top humans on Jeopardy.
Right.
Well, what he did next? They turned him into Dr. Watson, and they're using him as a diagnostic tool in hospitals. Well, now what they're planning on doing is turning him loose on basically your smartphone, and they're literally asking mobile developers that in fact, IBM has what's called the Watson Mobile Developer Challenge, where you give them an idea for the next groundbreaking mobile app, and they said winners will receive mentoring and support from IBM and access to what they call the Watson Sandbox.
I thought they were going to have access to Watson and Watson would talk to them maybe.
Well, it probably is. It is. In fact, I got let me play this short little video for you here.
Data that is available today is unstructured data. It's text, written words, spoken words.
And that's really where Watson comes in. consider a human who could read essentially an unlimited number of documents and understand those documents and completely retain all the information in those documents. Now imagine you could ask that person a question. That's essentially what this gives you.
So they basically told you what it is. Now, I got a feeling that the NSA already has one of these puppies because, they're sifting through all of our emails and texts and phone calls and everything else. But this is going to be something that the average Joe will be able to use in the future. So instead of using your keyboard to access the internet, it's going to be kind of like Siri on steroids.
Right. I know we only got a few seconds left, so before we go off the air, wanted to make sure we thank our sponsors.
That's right. We want to thank Tub King and we want to thank MedMasters.
Right, for sponsoring the show. And we also want to tell our guests that we have the book coming out here. It's actually finished, so it'll be Working the Web to Win. And actually, they'll be able to get it free if they start watching the TV show and start guessing on which of the Easter eggs are the winning Easter eggs for the thing. So
that's right.
There's the cover right.
That's right, and the cover's right here. And if you fill out the form on the Working the Web to Win homepage, you'll be able to get an advanced copy of it.
Right.
So other than that,
keep working the web.